If you want to measure the adoption rate of your design system in Figma, I'll show you the solution with this plugin. In just a few seconds, you'll be able to measure the adoption rate of any frame that uses your design system. Let me show you right now. So to start, go to systemup.io. Here, I'm going to create an account. I'll enter my name, my email, and my password. Okay. I can start setting up my profile. So I'll click on Start Now here, and I'll enter the name of my organization, which corresponds to my company. So for example, I could put Systemup. Here, the name of my team, so it could possibly be the name of my company, and if I have a team name, I can enter that as well. So for example, I'll put Systemup Design. Next, I'm going to enter the name of my design system. Mine is called Orbital. Then I need to grant access to Figma so that Systemup can communicate with the Figma API. So as we can see here, Systemup doesn't have access to any information. It's just for API access. So I'm going to authorize access. Okay, now here I need to enter the URL of my Figma library where I have the components of my design system. So I'll go to Figma right away, open my library file, copy the link, and then paste it directly here. Now this process can take more or less time depending on whether your file has a lot of components or not. Okay, so now I've arrived at my dashboard. Here I have several options. I can invite members to my organization. Here I can download the Figma plugin. So the Figma plugin will allow me to directly measure the adoption rate of my design system within Figma. And here, as we'll see later, I can also import files directly into the dashboard. So to find the plugin, I can either click here or on Figma here. If I go to the template and tools page here, I can search for Systemup, and in the plugins section, I'll find it here. Now, I'm going to open a design file that uses my design system. So for example, this one, let me show you. I'll launch the Systemup plugin. So now I'm going to log in with the account I just created. Alright, I'm going to start using it right away. Now I'm going to select a frame that I want to measure. So I start the measurement and it calculates the adoption rate I have in relation to the use of my design system. As we can see here, I'm currently at 100%. So that means I'm using very few components from the design system. Now we can select the entire frame here, or I can select frames one by one inside to pinpoint exactly where the issues are coming from. Here we can see in the leader at this level that I'm at 100%. So even though I have a text here, hello, if I remove it, for example, and measure again, I'll still be at 100%. That's because the system doesn't actually measure text, since texts aren't components, and we want to be able to insert text into the interface without necessarily lowering the adoption percentage here. However, if I detach my component here, the one that came from my design system, and then run the measurement again, instead of 100%, now I'm down to 42%. So I'll go back and you can see here that I have several nested frames. I can also nest multiple frames within each other without again degrading the result here. If I measure again here, I do have two frames with a component here that does indeed come from my design system. Here, for example, if I measure this part, here you can clearly see that I'm at 100% because if I look inside, I also have my two components that do indeed come from the library I imported into the application. If I keep digging here, I'm going to measure this part. And here I'm at 0%. That means that in this entire section, well, I have 0% of components that come from the design system. If, for example, I removed this and had, this part here as a component from my design system, then it would actually increase the result. So now I'm going to measure this part again. So from 5%, I went up to 10%. I'm going to go back. I'll check here again. Now I'll go back to 5%. And if I take this component here, I'll copy it and add it to my design system. Here, for example, I'll call it mockup. I'm making it a component that I'm going to publish. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it now. Here, I'll carefully remove this part and then place my new component directly into my screen, just like that. And if I measure again here, I've gone back up because now it recognizes that this is indeed a component from the design system. And as soon as I have a component from the design system, it will of course ignore everything inside it. Since we consider that this part comes from the design system, everything inside will necessarily be compliant. And like this, I'll be able to measure the elements nested within each other a bit to identify where I have issues. For example, in this section here, I'm at 40%. Here, if I measure this, I'm indeed at 100%. So this way, I'll really be able to measure my entire design, and it will help me improve the quality to be fully compliant with my design system. Another thing here, if I measure my entire frame, we can see that I have two hidden layers. So hidden layers, if they are not from the design system, we can simply consider them unnecessary, and I could delete them here to actually improve my score. So here the plugin, the designer can use it as much as they want, and it remains completely private for them. No data is uploaded to the dashboard. However, if I go back to the dashboard here, I can also import a file to be measured. So here I'm going to paste the link to my Figma file that uses my design system. For example, here I'm going to reuse this file. I'm going to paste the link here. Depending on the size of the file, this can take more or less time. And here it will fetch all the information from my file. So as we can see here, I get all the pages from my Figma file. I have exactly the same thing here, and I'll be able to select the screens I want to measure. So for example, I'll select these three and click Save. Then I simply go back to the dashboard and I'll be able to start a measurement. So here we can see that I'm at 44% for everything I've measured. It will give me here the average of the frames I've selected. So the idea is to be able to measure finished designs, the ones that are ready to go into development. Here, if I add a file or update the file I've selected here, for example, I'll add a few more frames. Here I'll select this and here this one. And then I'll take a new measurement. So here you can clearly see in the first measurement, I was at 49%. In the second measurement here, I'm at 44%. The dashboard really allows me to have control over everything that is produced and validated. Whereas the use of the plugin is more intended for designers, and when they come to measure everything they've done, they can use it either during the design process or once they've finished to check their work, and it remains completely private for them. Everything they measure will not be sent back here to the dashboard. So we have two products in one. Here we have the plugin, which is intended for designers in Figma, and a dashboard that is more for the team managing the design system. So if you want to start measuring the adoption of your design system on Figma, head over right now to systemup.io.